You know that gut-wrenching feeling, the one where your stomach drops out from under you, like you're on a roller coaster that just hit a vertical plunge? I felt that. But it wasn't at some theme park, and it wasn't for fun. It was in a stuffy conference room, the air thick with unspoken words, and the faces staring at me were the very people I called family. My brother Mark slid a thick stack of papers across the polished mahogany table. My company's logo, bold and familiar, was printed right at the top. "Just a formality, really," he said, giving a casual wave of his hand. "We just need you to re-sign some of these older agreements. You know, housekeeping stuff." I picked up the pen. It felt heavy, a familiar weight in my hand. I glanced down at the top sheet, and then I saw it. My signature, scrawled across the dotted line, perfectly imperfect, just how I always signed. The problem, I'd never signed that document. Not this one. Not for this purpose. My breath hitched. The blood drained from my face, leaving a cold, hollow ache. My family sitting around the table shifted. Their smiles a moment ago, so comforting now, looked like something sharp and predatory. I slowly looked up, meeting their eyes, and in that instant, my whole world tilted on its axis. My company, my life's work, everything I had poured my soul into was being stolen from me. And the people doing it were the ones I had sacrificed everything to protect. It feels like a lifetime ago, the sound of shattered glass echoing in my childhood home. My parents fought constantly. My childhood wasn't filled with warm memories and laughter. It was more like a battlefield, a constant struggle to find peace in a house that rarely had any. My older siblings, Mark and Sarah, seemed to float above it all. They were effortlessly charming, always getting what they wanted, always favored. Me, I was the anchor, the quiet observer, the one who stepped in when things got too loud, too broken. I was the responsible one, the peacemaker. I was the one who made sure dinner was on the table and homework was done, even if it meant my own dreams got pushed aside. My parents, worn out by their own drama, fell into this strange pattern of favoritism. Mark and Sarah were the creative ones, the sensitive ones. I was the practical one, the strong one, which looking back was just their way of saying, "You can handle it, so you will." I remember so many evenings curled up in my bed, listening to the shouting through thin walls. A knot of dread always tightened in my stomach. I'd lie there and imagine a different life, a life where I was in control, where I built something so solid, so unshakable, that no one could ever take it away. A place of my own, born from my own grit and determination. That dream, born from the chaos of my youth, became my North Star. It pushed me through college, where I worked 2 jobs just to pay tuition. It kept me going through sleepless nights, hunched over a borrowed laptop, researching, coding, dreaming. It was the driving force behind every decision, every sacrifice. It was the fuel that kept me going, always pushing forward. I started with absolutely nothing but an idea, a burning passion to create something meaningful. It all began in my tiny, cramped apartment, late nights, fueled by cheap instant coffee and pure stubbornness. I launched my first product, a software solution designed to make logistics easier for small businesses. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't flashy, but it solved a real problem, and slowly businesses started to notice. The first few years were a blur of nonstop work. I was the CEO, the customer service representative, the marketing team, even the janitor sometimes. I poured every ounce of my energy, every single penny of my savings, into nurturing this fragile seed of an idea. I lived and breathed this company. I'll never forget the day I landed my first big client. I almost cried right there on the phone. It wasn't just a win for the company. It was a win for that scared little kid who had always dreamed of stability. As the company grew, so did my vision. We expanded. We hired more amazing people. We developed new and exciting products. The sacrifices were huge. I missed countless family gatherings. I canceled vacations. Many holidays were spent working, but it was all worth it. Every late night, every stressful negotiation, every moment of doubt was completely overshadowed by the thrill of seeing my vision come to life. Knowing that I was building something truly impactful, and through it all, my family was always in the back of my mind. I wanted to give them the security I never had. I wanted to lift them up to make sure they never had to worry about money again. I bought my parents a beautiful new house. I paid off Mark's growing piles of debt. I funded Sarah's ambitious, and let's be honest, often unsuccessful artistic endeavors. My success wasn't just my own. I saw it as a shared victory, a means to an end. The end being a happier, more stable life for all of us. But success, I soon learned, casts a long, deceptive shadow. It wasn't long before I started to notice subtle shifts. Mark, who had always struggled to hold down a job, suddenly became intensely interested in my business operations. Just offering a helping hand, family first, he'd say conveniently showing up at important meetings, always offering his unsolicited advice. Sarah, whose artistic pursuits had consistently drained my bank account, started suggesting creative partnerships within the company. These often involved ventures that had little to do with our main business and everything to do with her personal passions. At first, I just brushed it off. They were family after all. They meant well. Right. I was so caught up in the whirlwind of scaling the business, expanding, taking on new challenges, that I didn't see the insidious creep of their influence. They started introducing me to important people, who it turned out were just their friends. They'd subtly steer conversations, always positioning themselves closer to the core of where decisions were made. My board, which was initially made up of trusted mentors and industry veterans, slowly began to include family representatives. Their arguments for these additions were always framed in terms of shared vision and strengthening family ties. It felt good at first to have them involved. It felt like we were truly building something together, just as I'd always wanted. I ignored the uneasy feeling in my gut, that faint whisper of alarm that told me something was off. I told myself it was just growing pains. The first real clue was small, almost too tiny to notice. A vendor contract that I vaguely remembered signing, but the terms seemed slightly different than I recalled. Then there was the missing money from a smaller subsidiary account. It was attributed to an unforeseen operational expense that no one could quite explain clearly. My financial director, a meticulous woman named Eleanor, looked at me with a worried frown. "Are you sure about this, sir? The paperwork seems unusual." I waved her off, blaming it on my own oversight, the immense stresses of running a rapidly expanding company. But a seed of doubt had been planted. Strange documents would start appearing on my desk requiring my signature. They were always presented with a sense of urgency. "Just a quick one, boss, it's for compliance," Mark would say, hovering over me as I signed, his eyes tracking the pen, watching my hand. I started to feel a pervasive sense of unease, a feeling that something crucial was being hidden from me. A vital piece of the puzzle always just out of my reach. There were hushed conversations that would stop abruptly the moment I entered the room. My emails sometimes felt incomplete, as if a whole thread of communication had been removed. I found myself feeling increasingly isolated within my own company, like a king in a castle that was slowly being dismantled around him. The feeling of being cheated, of being taken advantage of, grew stronger with each passing day. I started cross-referencing documents. I began digging through old files late at night, a growing dread churning in my stomach. The puzzle pieces were there, scattered and seemingly unrelated, but they were slowly, terrifyingly starting to form a clear picture. And then came the big reveal. It wasn't in some dramatic courtroom scene. It was in the quiet, methodical discovery of betrayal. Eleanor, bless her meticulous soul, couldn't shake her unease about that unusual paperwork. She spent weeks quietly, painstakingly cross-referencing every single document, every signature, every financial transaction. She worked tirelessly, often staying late, driven by her own sense of integrity. One evening, she called me into her office. Her face was pale, her eyes wide, with a mixture of fear and disbelief. Spread across her desk were dozens of documents, contracts, agreements, official papers, all bearing my signature, yet none of which I recalled ever signing. She had consulted with a forensic document examiner, a real expert who had confirmed my worst fears. The signatures were forgeries, expertly done, almost indistinguishable from my own. But fakes, nonetheless. My breath hitched. The scattered pieces of the puzzle slammed together with a sickening thud. The strange documents, the missing money, the subtle manipulations, the gnawing feeling of being an outsider in my own creation. It all made chilling sense. My siblings, my own family. They had systematically, meticulously, and with chilling premeditation, forged legal documents to gain control of my company. They weren't just meddling, they were orchestrating a full-blown hostile takeover from within. They had leveraged their positions, their access, and my unwavering trust to slowly strip away my ownership, one perfectly forged signature at a time. The discovery hit me like a physical blow, leaving me gasping for air. The betrayal was so profound, so utterly soul-crushing that for a moment I couldn't move. I couldn't think. It was a pain deeper than any financial loss. It was a wound to my very soul. The confrontation was swift. It was brutal. And in a strange, cathartic way, it was entirely satisfying. The conference room was bathed in the harsh, fluorescent light, casting long shadows that mirrored the darkness that had settled in my heart. Mark, Sarah, and their carefully selected board members sat opposite me, their expressions ranging from feigned concern to barely concealed smugness. They still thought they had the upper hand. They still believed I was blissfully unaware. "You asked me to re-sign some documents today." I began, my voice surprisingly steady. It was a quiet calm, the kind that comes just before a storm. I pushed the forged agreement across the table, the one with my perfectly replicated signature. "This one, for instance." Mark's eyes flickered a tiny hint of unease, crossing his face. Sarah shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Yes, just standard procedure." Mark said, his voice a little too loud, a little too casual. He tried to sound confident, but a tremor was noticeable. "She's standard procedure." I scoffed. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Funny, because I don't recall ever signing this particular agreement, or this one. I slid over another document, then another, a growing pile of forged papers. Or any of these, for that matter. Their faces began to pale. The smugness slowly evaporated, replaced by a dawning horror. They exchanged quick, nervous glances. "What are you talking about?" Sarah blustered, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. It was thin, shaky. "I'm talking about forgery." I stated, my voice gaining strength with each word, each one a hammer blow. "I'm talking about fraud. I'm talking about grand theft perpetrated by the very people I trusted most in this world." I leaned forward, my gaze sweeping across their stunned, terrified faces. "I know everything. Every forged signature, every shady transaction, every backdoor deal. I have proof. Forensic evidence, financial records, everything you've done to try and steal what is rightfully mine." Mark's eyes darted frantically to the door, a clear flicker of panic in their depths. "This is ridiculous. You're making baseless accusations. Am I—" I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table with a soft thud. "I've already consulted with legal counsel. I've informed the authorities. This isn't a family dispute anymore, Mark. It's a criminal investigation." Their faces crumpled. The last vestiges of their bravado shattered. The power dynamic in the room had shifted irrevocably. The hunters had become the hunted. I watched as their carefully constructed facade crumbled, revealing the raw fear and desperation beneath. It wasn't a moment of pure triumph, not truly. It was a moment of profound sadness, a crushing confirmation of the depth of their betrayal. But amidst the sorrow there was a fierce, unwavering sense of resolve. I had taken back what was mine, every single piece of it. The aftermath was messy. It was painful. But it was absolutely undeniably necessary. The legal battles were grueling, long, and exhausting, but with the irrefutable evidence we had gathered, the outcome was clear. My siblings faced serious consequences for their actions, and the details of their deception became public knowledge. The shame was immense, not just for them, but for my parents, for the entire family. The very name I had worked so hard to build was dragged through the mud by their actions. For a long, long time, I wrestled with so much guilt. I constantly asked myself, had I failed them somehow? Had my success inadvertently created this monster? Was I to blame for their greed? But then I remembered the child who listened to the breaking glass, the young man who built a company from scratch with nothing but dreams and sheer determination. I hadn't failed them. They had chosen their path. Their choices were their own. The emotional resolution wasn't some sudden burst of sunshine. It wasn't a movie ending where everything is perfect overnight. It was a slow, deliberate process of healing and rebuilding. I had to sever ties not just with my siblings, but with the version of myself that was perpetually trying to earn their love and approval. I had to let go of the idea of the perfect family, the one I had always dreamed of creating. I set firm boundaries, something I had never ever done before in my life. I focused on my company, pouring my energy back into its true purpose, into innovation, into ethical growth. I surrounded myself with a team of loyal, trustworthy individuals who believed in my vision, who worked hard, and who shared my values. They became my new family in a way. I learned that betrayal, especially from family, leaves deep scars. They don't just fade away quickly. But I also learned about my own incredible resilience. I am not that scared kid anymore, afraid of conflict, desperate for approval. I am not the naive idealist who believed family could do no wrong. I am stronger, wiser, and far more discerning. I am a survivor. My company, once almost stolen from beneath my feet, is now more robust than ever, built on an unshakable foundation of integrity and trust. The scars are there, a constant reminder, not of what I lost, but of what I overcame. They are a testament to my strength, and I am ready for whatever comes next, standing tall, empowered, and truly wonderfully free. What have you learned about trusting those closest to you? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.